Well, hi everyone. How are you? I hope you're all well. And I hope you all had a safe and happy New Year's Eve. It is early in the morning here on New Year's Day. You reach a certain point in your life where you just realize it's just not worth it to go out on New Year's Eve. I mean, like if you're going out and you're at a party in a motel and you have a room there, I think those are the kind of New Year's Eve things that are kind of cool. But other than that, you're just competing with everybody else who's drunk on the road. Um, More Deweys, snowy, icy. It just not. I mean, you go out a couple of times on New Year's Eve in your life. I think when you're just young and stupid, and then you're like, it's not worth the risk. It's just really not. So I hope all of you had a safe and happy New Year. Happy New Year. I can't believe it's 2023. Um, I was doing really good, my recovery here with my shoulder, looking great and all that good stuff. And just really doing a lot, catching up around the house and stuff where I could. And then I just kind of came home from my dentist appointment and I looked in the mirror and I looked really pale. I just didn't really feel that great. I was like, I think I need a nap. And there I went in one of my Sleeping Beauty coma, whatever they are. And I woke up 36 hours later. So, it's just my body. I just do that. I don't know how or why. No one seems to know how or why. It's not like it's induced with any sleeping pills. I don't take any sleeping pills or anything. Took those years ago because I have a problem falling asleep. But once I fall asleep, I stay asleep, obviously. So I slept through New Year's Eve and New Year's Day Eve. So here I am, I guess. It's Sunday, New Year's Day. So I am watching The Handmaid's Tale. So talk about a brain scramble. And you know what's weird is that I can see sometimes more realistically The Handmaid's Tale being true because you could see that, it was like it would be like another Holocaust happening in America, essentially. I could see it being more true than some of the stuff I see in this Watts bullshit. I cannot believe how many things are just wrong. Wrong. I see that I woke up and my husband said, "Hey, as soon as you touch the internet, you're going to see that, they made an arrest in the Moscow, so I don't want you to be too behind, because I know you're into that stuff." And I was like, "What?" And I looked at him and he's got those beady eyes and he's from Wazoo. And if you remember in the beginning, I said, that Wazoo and U of Idaho, Moscow, they all party together and stuff. They all know each other. And so they're saying this guy's from Wazoo. He was actually in criminal justice. So what he just got his PhD in criminology or whatever, and so that makes sense as to why it would have taken longer because he probably covered his tracks well. Um, they believe he is the sole offender. Whether or not he had a lookout or whatnot, they're not sure of, but they are, saying they're sure that the one weapon was used for all four. Um, and it's that Kabar thing, that military Marine issued knife, and it's got that handle point, so your hand isn't gonna slip. And people are like, "Oh yeah, well, um, knives break when they hit bone, and blood's slippery, so you're gonna cut yourself and all that." No, 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 no. This is a Marine issued knife made to defend a Marine in circumstances where there are multiple assailants. That weapon would not have broken when it hit bone. Repeatedly. Sadly enough. So if they're saying, was there a second person, like Nancy Grace said, it wasn't like they sat there and traded off weapons. It's like, no. Was there a second person there to watch and whatever? Probably yet to be seen. But looks like they've got the one perp. They know the weapon was used. They were going to get their cleaning crew in finally, but it sounds like his defense attorney said no. They wanted a chance at looking at the scene for their evidence. Now, what does that do to all of the other people who have created content stating it was other people? It's kind of dicey, and that's why it's like I'm kind of glad I didn't speak out too much when other theories were brought out, because I was afraid of getting sued. Let's just be honest here. So we'll just have to see. I know that there was a teacher who was ruled out as a person of interest the other day. And then I heard that, at least one person has filed suit against a creator for saying that they were involved. So we'll just have to kind of see how this all, this is all new in, our world. But, there are other crimes that have happened in this time frame, and they deserve attention too. And so I hope that other people can kind of get back on track at giving equal attention to victims. Moscow took up a lot of time, and it deserved to. But like I say, I mean, there's some other really sad stories that have happened too that no one's really hearing about. And it's not that I want people to hear about sad things. It's that I want victims to be treated equally and people to hear about crime so that prevention can occur. Because that's how we can save lives, is by prevention and identification and knowledge and truth and power. And with that, that's my New Year's wish, is that more people will come forward and start looking at the truth and the facts. And now we're 830 of us on this channel. So I've got 830 people working with me to find the truth and the facts, and to honor Bella and Cece more than they were honored in the investigation here. Because the investigation never focused on them and what they had been going through for years, and how the dysfunction and dishonesty in their lives that they lived led to their deaths. And that's a very, very unfortunate thing. And all we can do now is try and help other children by identifying abusive patterns, such as what the mom did. And Neek's Peaks came out with some more good stuff. So keep watching Neek's Peaks. I think that Neek's Peaks just does a great job of showing what happened without bias, by showing the actual videos that Shanann posted, showing them so that you can see them and you can really start to identify and understand what was going on. And without further ado, I left off on page 539. So this is part 20, and it is the Watts discovery, and we're starting on page 539, and that's discovery page 605. So we're starting on page 539 out of 1960. And we're recording on 1123. Oh, that's an interesting thing. So we're 123. Huh? Who knew? And it's at 4 a.m. So 123 at 4 a.m. What do you know? 4:30, 4430. Oh my goodness. All right, so here we go. We're still where Papa Ronnie is within earshot, and let's see here. I remember Oh, well, when Chris said Shanann told him, fuck you and fuck you and fuck you. Well, there you go. So go to 539. And I remember talking about Chris always said he had a shovel with him at work. Okay, so there we go. So now it says, and this is still the Tam burglar speaking, and she says, here we go, let me get everything situated so that in case Boo tries to go and put his butt all over everything, I'm protected. Boo Boo was very cuddly with me in my 30-hour slumber. He just came and would just keep snuggling up with me, and he just goes right on my belly, so he just nuzzles up. He's just a little baby cat. So I'm drinking Gatorade, hard stuff for the new year. I can't see what flavor it is. It's blue though. And I say Gatorade, but it's Gatorade Zero. I'm not drinking a bunch of sugar. It says here, I asked Chris how Shanann was dressed, and he said she was wearing a black or gray t-shirt and blue underwear. I asked Chris how much time passed from the time he put her back in bed after she was deceased until he put her in the truck, and Chris said it took only minutes. I asked Chris if he was sure the girls' blankets and animals weren't going to be in the tanks, and he said no. Chris said the blankets and the animals were left near the sheet by the grave. S.A. Coder asked Chris what the girls were wearing, and he said they were wearing nightgowns. Chris said Cece was wearing a pink nightgown with birds on it, and Bella's nightgown had a unicorn or believe on it. S.A. Coder asked Chris how someone could get the girls out of the tank, and he said the girls were inside 20-foot tanks, which had hatches on the top. S.A. Coder asked Chris how far down the girls were in the tanks, and Chris said it depended on the fluid level in the tank. S.A. Coder asked Chris if there were any chance his baby monitor recorded anything, and Chris said no. S.A. Coder asked Chris what he believed made Shanann snap. Chris said it was Shanann knowing that he had an affair, even though he didn't admit anything. And Chris said Shanann needed him to admit it, and he refused. S.A. Coder reiterated some of the events Chris had told us and asked him again what he saw when he went downstairs on Monday. Chris said he heard commotion upstairs, but didn't think anything of it. Chris said he figured one of the kids got up. Chris said he decided to go back upstairs and talk to Shanann and go to their room, master bedroom. She wasn't in there. Chris said he looked in the baby monitor, oh no, which was beside the master bed. Chris said he saw Bella and observed Bella's covers pulled back and she was sprawled out on her bed. Chris said after 3 to 5 seconds the baby monitor cycled over to Cece and he observed Shanann on top of Cece and ran into Cece's bedroom. Chris said Shanann was straddling Cece on the bed. And Chris said he walked up from behind when Shanann on the bed. Of course, we're missing words in this again because this whole thing is just a mess. It says, come up from behind when Shanann on the bed. Chris demonstrated that it looked like Shanann's hand was on Cece's neck. Chris said Cece was lying on her side, so he pulled Shanann off. Chris said Cece was limp and blue, so there's no movement at all. And Chris said, you pick up an arm and it just falls. Chris said he looked at Shanann, got on top of her, Shanann, and did the same thing. Chris denied having to knock Shanann down and said he pulled her off and onto the bed. Chris said he lost it. Chris said Shanann ended up lying down on the bed crossways when he pulled her off. Chris believed Cece had a queen-size bed. Chris said Cece was in the middle of the bed with her head near the headboard when he ran into the room. Chris then showed us an image on his cell phone of Cece's bedroom. Chris said he didn't believe Shanann put up a fight because he lost it so much. What? Chris said he felt so much anger that he didn't feel anything else when he strangled Shanann, and he had no marks on his body. Chris said he was numb, but he felt strangling Shanann was over fast. S.A. Coder asked Chris if it was possible Shanann's neck was broken, and he said he didn't think so. Chris described strangling Shanann with both of his hands and demonstrated on video. I asked Chris if Shanann was strangling Cece with one hand or two, and he said he came from the back and he wasn't sure. Chris then explained he knew Shanann was on top of Cece, but the monitor was black and white because it was dark. S.A. Coder asked Chris if he had any idea why Shanann would have hurt the girls, and he said, "We both love those kids more than you know." And Chris said people in his family have always told him they believed Shanann was unstable. Chris said his friends, later identified as his friend Mark, also told him they thought Shanann was unstable. Chris then said, "I don't want to paint a bad picture of her." I told Chris it didn't look good. S.A. Coder asked Chris if it was possible we would see something on the girls other than the cause of death being Shanann's hands, and Chris said no. S.A. Coder told Chris it was hard to believe his wife did it, and Chris said, "I know." S.A. Coder asked Chris if it was possible Shanann did one daughter and he, Chris, did Shanann and the other daughter. Chris said no. S.A. Coder asked if it was possible we may find his handprints on the girls' necks, and he said, "No, Lord, no." S.A. Coder told Chris we would be able to compare the diameter of the finger marks on the girls' necks. Chris said he understood. I asked Chris what he was thinking about, and he said he let his family down. Chris said he let his dad, mom, his sister, nephew, nieces, friends, co-workers, everybody. I asked Chris about the point when he witnessed Shanann strangling Cece, and he pulled Shanann off. I asked Chris if he thought about calling an ambulance, and he said Cece was blue and limp. Chris said he had never seen anything like it in his life. Chris said Cece was laid over, wasn't moving at all, and no gasp of breath. In parentheses, Chris said Cece was totally just blue. I told Chris I had been doing my job for a long time, and I told him most parents will never be able to fathom their child is dead, even if their kid is stiff or blue. Chris said parents always want to call to see if someone can revive their child. I asked Chris to explain what was going on in his head, and he said the rage that I felt for what she did just took over. I asked Chris if he agreed it sounded weird, and he said, "I understand. I see where you're coming from." I told Chris that I would hate for Shanann to get a bad rap if she didn't have anything to do with it. Chris said, "I know." I told Chris it wouldn't be fair, and he said, "I know." I asked Chris if he wanted to tell us the truth about what happened, and he said it was the truth. Chris said, "I did not hurt these girls." I asked Chris if he was good with the public knowing Shanann killed her daughters. Chris immediately responded by saying, "I did not hurt these girls." I asked Chris the question again, and he said, "Yes, because I did not hurt these girls." I told Chris I didn't think he meant to hurt his girls, and he said he didn't hurt them. I told Chris he didn't save them either, and he said, "I know that." Chris said none of it made sense. I asked Chris if he was sure Shanann didn't catch him in Cece's room, and he said, "No." S.A. Coder told Chris that it looked like Chris found a new life, and the only way to get the new life was to get rid of his old life. S.A. Coder told Chris he believed Chris killed the girls before Shanann came home. Chris said no. Chris's voice started trailing off as he said,
this is the truth. Chris said he was not a monster and did not kill his babies. S.A. Coder asked what was going to happen when the girl's cause of death comes back to him. S.A. Coder asked who it would come back to, and he said Shanann was on top of Cece. Chris said Bella was laid out, sprawled out on her bed. Chris said his fingerprints were not going to be on Cece's neck, and the fingerprints would belong to Shanann. Chris said he did not witness what Shanann did to Bella. S.A. Coder asked Chris why he took the bodies out of the house and buried them. Chris said he was scared and didn't know what to do. Chris said he was scared of what everything was going to look like. Chris said, my 2 babies were gone and I just did that to my wife. Chris said it was a nightmare. I told Chris that it seemed like Shanann was a pretty good mom, and he said, and I was a pretty good dad as well. Chris said, you don't really know a person until you don't know a person. I told Chris I would hate for people like Shanann, Bella, and Celeste who couldn't defend themselves to have someone lie about them. S.A. Coder asked Chris why he didn't put Shanann in the tanks, and he said he didn't know what to do. Chris estimated that Shanann was buried approximately 2 feet down in the ground, and Chris estimated it took him 20 to 30 minutes to dig Shanann's grave. I asked Chris how often the tanks are checked, and he estimated once a week. I asked Chris if he wanted someone else to find his girls, and he said he didn't know what else to do. Chris said he was going to Survey 319 anyway that morning, and he didn't know what else to do. S.A. Coder asked Chris what he meant from his prior interview when he, in parentheses Chris, talked about something happening to his wife and daughters, which was an act of pure evil. Chris said he was referring to the evil that he witnessed when Shanann was on top of Cece. Chris said he also felt evil for what he did to Shanann. S.A. Coder asked Chris again about what he witnessed in Cece's room, and Chris said Shanann was wearing the same clothes he buried her in. I asked Chris if Shanann ever went to bed when she got home, and he said all of that was true. I told Chris it appeared Shanann may have been up purchasing hair care products at 2:30 a.m. on her cell phone, and her credit card was denied. Chris said he wasn't aware of the purchase if it occurred. I asked Chris if Shanann got upset with him because they didn't have any money, and he said he wasn't aware of the attempted purchase. Well, side note from Tabitha Jane here, I'm sure it was an auto pull. I'm sure that it was an automated charge that didn't go through because there wasn't any money or on that certain credit card or something. I don't think she was up knowing that she had to get up so early in the morning and was not feeling well. I doubt she was up ordering things at 2:30 a.m. But, I'm not the domestic violence expert that's now paid to go around and talk about domestic violence now. I just don't think that the way this was handled was right. Ronnie asked for a lawyer no less than 4 times. The way that they kept twisting what he said is not right. The way that Tamburglar asked if there was any problem is because we know that Tamburglar ran outside, called her husband, and her husband called the news agencies and told them all of this. That's why I have no respect for Tamburglar. This was intimidating. And I believe this version. I don't believe the versions afterwards. And also, as a side note, it really bothers me that the officers went and strangled a doll on the monitors to see. Why would they do that? Why couldn't they just say, hey, can you see me in this monitor? Hello? Yeah, we tested the monitors, and yeah, you can see them. They're working. They go there. You wouldn't need to strangle a doll to show that you could see if a kid was being strangled. I mean, the dunce caps that could go around here. There are good investigators and there are not so good investigators. I truly believe that we need police, but we need police that do good and honorable work. All right, back to here. S.A. Coder asked Chris if it was possible Shanann would have a black eye, and he said no. Chris said he didn't punch or slap Shanann. S.A. Coder asked Chris if Shanann would have a stab mark on her body, and he said no. S.A. Coder asked Chris if the coroner was going to find out they were poisoned, and he said no. I asked Chris about what he talked to Kessinger about before his wife got home, and he said they always talk and it was about their day. Chris said Kessinger only knew about the disappearance by what she saw on the news. Chris said Kessinger didn't know his wife was pregnant, but she does know now. Chris said he was scared to tell Kessinger about the pregnancy because he felt that Kessinger wouldn't have gone on a date with him if she knew. Chris said Kessinger knew he was married with kids. Chris asked if we were going to talk to Kessinger, and we said yes. S.A. Coder asked Chris if Kessinger was going to tell us she knew he was going to kill his family, and he said no. Chris said Kessinger just knew they were going to hang out more after he got his own place. Chris said Kessinger, genuinely liked me. Chris begged us not to put Kessinger's name in the news because she'd been through enough in her life. I asked Chris if he felt sorry for what he did, and he said, I wish I wouldn't have lost control and got on top of Shanann and did that. And then I did that, referring to dumping them at the oil well site in parentheses. Chris apologized to myself and S.A. Coder for lying. I told Chris I believed he was there for a reason, and Chris said there's a reason why I didn't, that I came in because, there's a reason why I didn't come in with a lawyer either. So I just and this is going to happen, so I say enough room for dunce caps, and you need a dunce cap too, Christopher Watts, because you should not have opened your frickin' mouth. I told Chris I was struggling with the fact that as many people who would say he's a good person and would never do such a thing, there were an equal amount of people who would say the same thing about Shanann. Chris said, I know. I told Chris I was struggling with it, and he said, I know. And S.A. Coder then asked Chris how we could prove Shanann murdered the girls. Chris said we could examine their bodies and compare the hand marks on their necks. I asked Chris if he was sure they would have hand marks and that they weren't smothered, and he said they shouldn't have been smothered, no. And Bella, I don't know, but Cece, Shanann was on top of her, and Cece's head was to the side. I asked Chris if he saw Shanann using a pillow on top of Cece, and he said no. I asked Chris why there were sheets inside his kitchen trash. Chris said he used the fitted sheet to wrap up Shanann, found at the oil well site, so he didn't know what to do with the flat sheet and pillowcases that were left over. I asked Chris why he didn't try to hide the sheet out at the oil site, and he said he was so scared and didn't know what to do. S.A. Coder asked Chris if someone came up on him, and he said no. Chris said he knew his coworkers were on their way out to the oil site. Mentioning here by Tabitha Jane. Somebody asked me why, if this is true, why Shanann bled out. She didn't bleed out. The fluid that was on the sheet that was on her was what you call afterbirth. It's the fluid that is around the baby. It's called amniotic fluid, and there is a butt ton of it. I remember with my second child, and I didn't have, a diagnosis of too much fluid. I didn't have whatever you call it. And I lifted my leg up to go to bed. I was so mad because I wanted to go into labor. I'm this one. my second boy, he was 9 pounds, 2 ounces, but he was stuck face up. So that was the equivalent of maybe 1 pound heavier, but it still was just huge. And I was still 4'11" then. I didn't grow to my big 5'1.5" until I was older. But, so my second baby was just big, and I was so tired of being pregnant. It was a full moon, and full moons are known to give ladies relief, get them into labor. So I painted my toenails and went out, looked at the moon, and just begged the moon to just let me go into labor. And I just, I didn't jump, but I just kind of wiggled enough, like, please. And then I just cried, and I went to bed, put my leg up to get into bed, and my water broke. Same way I went into labor with my first. Went to get into bed after despair of not going into labor. Lift up my leg, there goes it. So I had to call my husband, and this was before cell phones. This was in 1993. 93? Yeah. 93. And we were given pagers when we signed up for our Lamaze class. We were each given pagers as part of the class. So the daddy would have a pager. So I tried the pager and he didn't call, so I had to call his work. And so he's coming, and I am getting ready to go, and just fluid is just everywhere. And I put on my stirrup pants, being it was 1993, and my little flats, because it was little pump flats, because it was 1993, and those were still in fashion. And we drove, and he was so mad because fluid was just going all over the car, his car. And we got out at the hospital, and I stood back up, and the fluid was just flowing so full that it was going down after I got out of the car. So all this time, for like an hour, I was still just oozing all of this water, amniotic fluid, and it was going into my shoes and flowing back out like a tidal freaking wave. There's so much amniotic fluid. And yes, she was 4 to 5 months pregnant, so she wouldn't have had that much. But the fluid that was on that sheet was not red blood. It was definitely amniotic fluid, and enough of it. I mean, it probably would have been like, I don't want to speculate because somebody will make fun of it. I can look it up and see where, with the measurements of the fetus, because I go by that to show that she was not as far along as she said she was. I go by the skeletal measurement of the fetus. The skeletal measurement. Not any soft tissues, because people say, oh yeah, that'll break down. No, the skeletal foot and the skeletal spine, and rump to spine, so the little head and everything. All of those were bones. So I went by those measurements. And so I can find out. But yeah, if you see the sheet looks like blood, but what it is it's the amniotic fluid, and then the reddish colored clay based dirt that she was buried in got into that amniotic fluid on that sheet. That sheet was not at all covered in blood of any type. This was, all three of them were bloodless unalivings. She did not bleed out. That was amniotic fluid. So just wanted to point that out. Somebody asked me that the other day. So back on track here. Still going with Tam Burler's commentary, and it says, I asked Chris about the electronics taken from his residence and asked him if he could provide me with their passwords. I wrote down the passwords which are attached to this report. An essay coder then asked Chris if he had any questions for us. Chris asked to use the restroom. Essay coder asked Chris if he had any weapons on his person, and Chris said no. Essay coder conducted a pat-down search of Chris and then escorted him to the restroom. Essay coder returned Chris to the room. An essay coder and I returned to the room with Chris a short time later and asked him if he was positive Bella and Celeste were inside the tanks. Chris said yes. Chris said he put the girls into the tanks by the hatch on top, and Chris said he had to walk up the stairs and then open the hatch. I told Chris the detectives on scene said they could barely fit their arm through the hatch, and Chris drew an imaginary shape on the table with his hand to show us the approximate diameter of the hatch. I asked Chris if it was hard to get the girls in the tanks, and he said no. I asked Chris if he had to push the girls into the tanks, and he said, not really. I asked Chris if Shanann was buried because he knew she was too big to fit in the tank, and he said yes. I asked Chris if each girl was going to be in a separate tank, and he said yes. Chris then advised he did not know how much fluid was in the tanks. I asked Chris if he could hear them drop, and he said Bella's tank seemed emptier than Cece's tank. I asked Chris if it sounded like Bella would have hit the bottom, and he said he heard a splash. I asked Chris if it was possible he put the girls in the tanks when they were alive, and he said, no, God, no, 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 God, no, God, no. Chris said there was no chance the girls were alive when they were dropped in the tanks. Thank God. I asked Chris if the coroner was going to find any resuscitation marks on the girls, and Chris asked, like from CPR or something? Chris said no. I asked Chris if he knew CPR, and he said he took a class one time at work, which was 2 years ago. Chris said the class used adult dummies, and he wouldn't even know how much pressure to apply to a child. Chris confirmed the girls were gone, and he didn't attempt any sort of resuscitation. I asked Chris if he ended up checking on Bella, and he said yes. Chris said Bella was blue in the face and not moving. I didn't hear anything as far as a pulse or a beat of any kind. S.A. Coder and I thanked Chris for speaking with us, and S.A. Coder asked Chris if he was hungry. Chris said he felt bad eating our food, and S.A. Coder brought Chris 2 pieces of pizza and a bottle of water. In parentheses, note, I gave Chris an additional 2 slices of pizza a short time later, which he also consumed. Okay, side note, that's weird. How could anybody eat while they're discussing this? I guess if he figured he wasn't going to see the light of day, then maybe he figured that's the last pizza he's ever going to have, but still. Just a second. What you doing, boo-boo? What you doing, honey? You gonna go night-night? What you doing? Just a second. Boo-boo has an issue. Boo-boo, what's the matter? So the heat comes out. What's the matter? Baby? Leave it alone? Can you leave it alone? Sorry. I put a bag at the side of the heater so it makes the heat flow in a little better, because it's right. They put the heaters right against the windows, and when it's really cold, you just don't really feel the heat. So I did that. He does not like the bag there. It's something weird. It's something different to him. So anyway, you okay, boo? We're all right. Mama can keep going. All right. So then, it says when we allowed Ronnie to return to the room to tell Chris goodbye, as a police officer was going to drive Ronnie to a hotel for the night, Ronnie told Chris the police took his Lexus. Ronnie said the other detectives, Ronnie, talked to said, what the, okay, honestly, like I say, you have one of the biggest crimes. I mean, next to OJ, and you don't make sure that this discovery reads like you're not. It's crazy. And like I say, I mean, I'm trying to read this discovery to you all in a way that it's easier to palate in pieces, but when they leave words out, it's really tough, and I don't want to insert words because I don't want to um, not be accurate. But over and again, I see things that are just blatant mistakes, and I'm just surprised that they didn't mind putting this out there, this unfinished, because it's sloppy, because it's just something else. Because okay, let's see here. There's no punctuation whatsoever, like I've said, and it's missing words as a whole over and again. So let me see how I can do this one here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Ronnie told Chris the police took his Lexus. Ronnie said the other detectives Ronnie, talked to said Chris's story changed a few times. Ronnie asked Chris if the baby monitor was upstairs or in the kitchen. Chris said it was upstairs, and Ronnie said he thought Chris said it was in the kitchen. Ronnie told Chris he loved him no matter what. And Ronnie said Ronnie was interviewed, and he told the detectives there was no way Chris, would ever hurt his children. Ronnie said it was a problem that he hadn't called the police, and Chris agreed. I mean, on the off chance that you're ever in this position, anybody in the world, and you see your wife on the monitor unaliving one of your children, and you think, oh, they're already not here, and they're going for the next, just grab on to the nearest cell phone because we have them connected to us. They're everywhere. Just dial 911. You don't have to tell them anything. You don't have to say anything. They can figure it out. You can yell to them what's going on. You can say, one child's blue, I'm trying to stop her from the other. Come in through the front door. You can yell at them while you are restraining the person from unaliving your children. Just don't go starting to unalive the other person. You can restrain the other person, but your priority would be to get the one who was just unalived alive and stop the other. So just pick out the 3 numbers 911 and you'll be fine. You will not be in this predicament. Okay? Sage advice from TJ right there. Okay. Let's see here. Ronnie said they would just have to prove it some other way. And Ronnie said it was unfortunate that his baby monitor didn't record. And Ronnie hugged Chris and left the police department. S.A. Coder returned to the room and asked Chris to clarify the size of the hatch. S.A. Coder asked Chris to compare it to his paper plate. Chris estimated the hatch was twice the size of his paper plate. S.A. Coder asked Chris if he had to squeeze the girls in to get them in the hatch. And Chris said it wasn't right. Chris said he put the girls into the hatch feet first. Chris described the girls with their arms stretched above their head. S.A. Coder asked Chris why he put them in separate tanks, and Chris said he wasn't thinking at that point in time and was scared out of his mind and didn't know what to do. Chris said he walked up the staircase and put one daughter in the tank and then returned with the second daughter and put her in the second tank. S.A. Coder asked Chris if he had to cut the girls up or anything, and Chris said no. Chris assured S.A. Coder the girls were in the tank batteries. Lastly, I returned to the interview room and asked Chris if a Frederick Police Department officer could photograph him without a shirt on to make sure he didn't have any marks or injuries on him. And Chris agreed, and Officer Matt James photographed Chris's face, head, arms, chest, back, hands, and legs. Officer James advised me the photographs would be turned into their digital evidence storage room, so she could go look at them later. Still freaked out about her massaging him like that. It was just weird. Results 2. Results of the polygraph examination were released to Chris Watts, Detective Baumhover, and the 19th Judicial District Attorney's Office. The report package will be mailed to Detective Baumhover, which will include the original advisement of rights form, consent form, and biographical form. The audio recordings and videos from the polygraph and interviews are attached to this report. The attachments are Watts' Miranda advisement, Watts' polybio form, Watts' polyconsent, iNet Now app issues, emails between Watts and Kessinger, polygraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the disclosure. Now, why do we have 6 polygraph enclosures if there was 1 polygraph taken with 3 questions? Disclosure and disclosure part 2, audio of the poly and interviews with Chris Watts on 8/15, follow-up interview with Chris on 8/15, Chris signed drone photo of tank signed, and then 8:15 at 1800, which is 6 o'clock, to a civvies of the Chris Watts disclosure part 3, disclosure video part 3, 2018, TAC 273956948, TAC 0821, TAC C Watts 2018, TAC 2273 _ 201808228 transcript, and then the password for Watts's devices. Now, we are on Discovery page 611. We are in the investigative supplement, and it is the execution of the search warrant for Survey 319, recovery of Celeste and Bella Watts. And it's the reporting LEO, Tamburglar, and Stacey Galbraith, approved by, of course, none other than Agent in Charge, Kirby Quinn Lewis. The synopsis here is on Thursday, August 16th, 2018. Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI agent Tammy Lee responded to a remote crude oil tank battery site to assist with the recovery of Bella and Celeste Watts. Bella and Celeste had been dropped into separate crude oil tanks by their father, Christopher Chris Watts, following their murders on Monday, August 13th, 2018. Now, little commentary by TJ here. Let's consider this. They were unalived on Monday, August 13th, in the middle of the night. Kind of like here I am sitting here in the middle of the night doing this, right? Technically, August 13th. And they were reported missing first when NA tried at 9 o'clock and no one listened to her, so she upped the game at 1 o'clock. Okay? So you say August 13th. His confession, the first confession, and when they're going to recover the girls, the confession was done on the 15th, so 2 days later, and on day 3 they're recovering the bodies. Okay? So this whole thing was wrapped up in under 72 hours, arguably. And that wasn't good enough for Shanann's mother. She had to call all of those times that I reported, and I'm sure I'm going to report more, and complain to them and yell to them and tell them that she's calling the FBI on them and every other thing when they already had the alphabet soup of LEOs there. Really? What kind of impatient, entitled, arrogant asshole would be making commands like that under the first 24 hours. I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, the rest of us, we have to wait for, and others don't even get that privilege. I mean, honestly, she should, well, I don't know. I don't, I I'm just, I, she's going to have to deal with somebody at some point, and I think that it might be her maker, and I think then the true story will come out. I don't think that we'll ever get the truth out of how much she had to do with this. But her ungrateful ass just never ceases to surprise me in how she raised such a mean, greedy, and unhappy shrew of a wife. You know? It's those two that caused all of this. I don't think that the men in her family had a chance. I think she started the emasculation long ago, and she probably isn't finished. And that's probably why Frank drinks. When I saw Frank with the girls, I just see nothing but love. I just see him as a giving grandpa, but that's just what I see. Papa Ronnie's a good grandpa, too. The girls had good grandpas. And I think Cindy Watts is a very nice person, too. So, at least they had some positive influences on their short life. So the synopsis here that we're dealing with is when they are getting ready to go to a crime scene. I don't know if this is going to be upsetting or not. We're on Discovery page 613 again because it's in the investigative supplements. It's giving a lot of the same information about Bella Watts, blah, 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 that we've seen so many times. I'm not going to repeat, where they go through this paperwork where they say him as the suspect and then Bella and Cece, blah, 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 because we're going into the forensic pathologist things, vernacular here. So, I will try to eyeball as I go through, and if it's going to be something that's a little too upsetting, I'll try to give you a heads up. But just be ready. Be ready if I've got to give you a sensitivity warning. Because we've got forensic pathologist Michael Burson, and it says he's non-LEO. And then we've got Joey Weiner, who's a person, who's a white female. Oh, I didn't know that Joey Weiner was a woman. Well, goodness sakes. And then Discovery page 614, and then Joey Weiner, the coroner investigator. Okay. And then we've got the alphabet soup of LEOs, so I've already read off. The narrative begins on the following page. Okay, here we go. Discovery page 615, in case you're following that way. Thursday, August 16, 2018, Colorado Bureau of Investigation CBI agent Tammy Lee responded to a remote crude oil tank battery site to assist with the recovery of Bella and Celeste Watts. Bella and Celeste had been dropped into separate crude oil tanks by their father, Christopher Chris Watts, following their murders on Monday, August 13, 2018. This report documents my assistance at the recovery site, which was identified as Survey 319 GPS coordinates 40.21624.374, TAC 104.36667. Yeah, you got that 666 in there. You sure do. Nothing but evil in this shit. Let me see here. Alright, the action taken was on Thursday, August 16, 2018. I responded to Roggan, Colorado, where I met with CBI agent Stacy Galbraith, CBI agent in charge Kirby Lewis, CBI crime scene supervisor Dave Maloney, and CBI crime scene assistant Caitlin Schroeder. I also met with members of the Colorado State Patrol, CSP Hazardous Materials Section, to include Sergeant Luke Armstrong, Trooper Otto Wilson, and Trooper Ted Bandy. Not Bundy, Bandy. The CSP Hazmat unit was asked to assist the CBI with the recovery of Bella and Celeste from the tank batteries. The location for the recovery was Survey 319, which was identified through GPS coordinates as I just stated them, and the location was an oil well site which was leased by Anadarko Petroleum. Anadarko was also the employer of Chris Watts. We were all escorted to the oil well site located north of Roggan, Colorado by Anadarko employee Gerald Manning. Arriving at the site, we met with CBI scene analyst David Yoakum, Frederick Police Department Detective Dave Baumhover, Frederick Police Officer Scott Coomrod, and numerous employees of Anadarko Petroleum, DT Welding, and Northern Plains Trucking. Photographs of the sign-in sheet are attached, and everyone on scene received a safety briefing from Anadarko employee Brett Schischler. During the briefing, we were informed of the East Tank battery contained approximately 9 feet of crude oil, and the West Tank battery contained approximately 1.4 feet of crude oil. Schischler advised they would first empty the East Tank battery. This is essentially a sensitivity warning. And I would walk away for a minute or so. Just go to the bathroom or grab yourself some tea or something to drink. It's not terrible, but it's close. It says, after the briefing, I walked over to the small, shallow grave where Chris's wife, Shanann Watts, had been exhumed the night before. There was an orange traffic cone near the open grave. I then assisted the CBI crime scene unit with conducting a grid search of the fields surrounding the tank batteries. Items of potential evidence were flagged with bright-colored stakes. I also assisted with conducting a search of the area outside the barbed wire fence surrounding the oil well site, but nothing was located. The weeds and sunflowers were thick, and it did not appear blankets and stuffed animals, previously mentioned by Chris as having been left near Shanann's grave, could have traveled that far in the wind. Exactly. Where are they then? Where are the stuffed animals? After the grid search was completed, I assisted with additional digging around Shanann's gravesite with shovels in an attempt to locate Bella and Celeste's blankets and stuffed animals. No blankets or stuffed animals were located. A short time later, Weld County Deputy Coroner Joey Weiner and forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Burson arrived on scene to assist with the recovery effort. We waited for the East Tank battery to be offloaded into tanker trucks, which took approximately 6 hours, due to the oil being methodically drained to a metal pan and then pumped into the tanker trucks through a filter. After almost all of the crude oil was removed from the tank, the rear manway cover of the tank was removed. Members of the CSP hazmat team entered the East Tank and recovered a deceased female child, later identified as Celeste Watts. Celeste was covered in oil and was brought off the tank in a white decontamination box that had been affixed with rope handles. Celeste was wearing a pink nightgown, and I could see she was also wearing a pull-up. Outside the tank, Dr. Burson patted her stomach area down with oil-absorbent pads. Celeste appeared to have skin slippage and was wrapped in a white sheet and then laid inside of an open body bag. After Celeste had been recovered, I left the scene and was not present during the recovery of Bella from the West Tank. Now there is a series of attached images that it says they're in there, and it does not show them. I think they're in zip files. And then the next thing is Discovery page 617 and page 549 of 1960. And we are at the autopsy of Shanann Bella and Celeste Watts at McKee Medical Center in Loveland. And Tammy Lee is reporting, and the backup LEO is a crime scene analyst named Eric Bryant, also from the CBI Denver with Tammy Lee. And it was approved 9/1/2018 by Agent in Charge Kirby Quinn Lewis. The synopsis of this discovery is on Friday, August 17, 2018. I, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI agent Tammy Lee, responded to McKee Medical Center, which is located at 2000 North Boise Avenue in Loveland, Colorado, to attend the autopsies of Shanann Bella and Celeste Watts. Shanann Bella and Celeste were all murdered on Monday, August 13th, 2018, and dumped at an oil well site north of Rogan, Colorado, referred to as CVI 319. Shanann's body had been recovered the evening of Wednesday, August 15th, 2018, from a clandestine grave. Bella and Cece were recovered Thursday, August 16th, from inside separate crude oil tank batteries. This report documents my observations at the autopsies. Now, my friends, I'm going to say, just based on this synopsis, that there's going to be sensitive content here. If you want to skip this video of mine, I won't be offended at all. Now, we're going back through the victims, and we're saying that it's Bella and Cece and Shanann and the officers here. And then we are going to go to the narrative. All right. On Friday, August 17, 2018, I, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI agent Tammy Lee, responded to McKee Medical Center, which is located at 2000 North Boise Avenue in Loveland, Colorado, to attend the autopsies of Shanann Bella and Celeste Watts. Shanann Bella and Celeste were all murdered on Monday, August 13, 2018, and dumped at an oil well site north of Rogan, Colorado, referred to as Survey 319. Shanann's body had been recovered the evening of Wednesday, August 15, 2018, from a clandestine grave. Bella and Celeste were recovered Thursday, August 16, 2018, from inside separate crude oil tank batteries. This report documents my observations at the autopsies. That synopsis was written twice. It was once in the box and once there. The action taken is on Friday, August 17th at approximately 10 o'clock a.m., I, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI agent Tammy Lee, responded to McKee Medical Center, which is located at, is this not repetitive? At 2000 Boise Avenue, Loveland, Colorado, to attend the autopsies of Shanann Bella and Celeste Watts. The autopsies were performed by Dr. Michael Burson and his assistant, Weld County Deputy Coroner Joey Weiner. Present during the autopsies were Weld County Coroner Carl Bletch, Weld County Chief Deputy District Attorney Steve Wren, Weld County Deputy District Attorney Patrick Roche, FBI Special Agent Graham Coder, and CBI Crime Analyst Eric Bryant. Prior to the performance of the autopsies, Chief DDA Wren read an email aloud to Dr. Burson, which included a request by the public defender's DNA expert to have the necks of all of the victims swabbed and removal and scrapings of the fingernails and x-rays. The first autopsy I performed was on Shanann Watts. Shanann had x-rays prior to the autopsy, and I informed Dr. Burson that Shanann had a prior neck surgery. Interesting, huh? That the Tamburglar told the pathologist, the one doing the autopsy, that Shanann had a prior neck surgery. Because in the autopsy report itself, it didn't say that there was anything on her neck, which was weird for all of us who know that, we saw that scar that she would have. And so to know that he knew that, and then you go down and you see that there was the x-ray that revealed the hardware in her neck. So now we know that, Tamburglar says, hey, she had a neck surgery. For me, like right now, I'm looking at my shoulder. I had five areas where there was stitching. So 5 areas of like 2 or 3 stitches. And then my longest scar is in my armpit where they reattach the bicep. But so like from the back of my shoulder to the top of my shoulder, the front area of my shoulder, there were 5 areas that had 2 or 3 stitches, right? It is 2 weeks and 3 days now, so like what, 17 days? The only scar you can see is this line going into my armpit, which makes it look like I have a vagine in my armpit. But honestly, you can't even like see these other scars. Like, medical science has came so far, and I realize this is 4 years ago, whatever. But I'm just in awe that most people would not know that I had rotator cuff surgery at this point, even. And going forward, like, I could see if I had, an examination or an autopsy, I could see that they wouldn't know that I had rotator cuff surgery. There's no metal put in it or anything. And like I say, it's just looking like another vagina coming out of my armpit, but they wouldn't know here. It's really interesting because the way that her neck, we could all see that scar, I swear, on different pictures, it's on the wrong side. And I'll match it up and be like, okay, left, because I know that when you take selfies, it reverses the image. And that, blah, 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 blah. But I have, like, tracked it up, and I'm going, that scar goes from left to right. Part of me thinks that she was drawing that frickin' scar on for attention. I mean, it doesn't make sense. And, and generally they will try to tuck scars in, with your natural, line of wrinkles or whatever. For my other surgeries I've had, they try to put it, somewhere where, it's not like so obvious. So, especially on the neck where you have your natural folds and stuff, I don't think that it should have been as obvious as it was. And that's why I think that she had to say something. That's why I think it's not noted in the first part of the autopsy. The hardware that she has is noted, but it's interesting. So, okay, back to the grind. Hamburglar informed Dr. Burson that Shanann had a prior neck surgery. Shanann was wearing a purple-gray t-shirt, black bra, and blue thong underwear. Who wears a bra to bed? Who wears underwear to bed? Who wears anything to bed? See, since I've birthed 6 kids and my 5th and 6th were twins, that's my kind of way a lot of the times to, like, survive a home invasion. Is I go to bed naked, and then if they saw me, it'd scare the shit out of them, and they'd run. They'd run the hell out of the house, and they'd be like, I'm sorry. Oh, I've gotten better about wearing nightgowns, though. Now that I can find some cute ones. Alright, so anyway. Those were removed, but I would never wear a bra to bed. not underwear either. Why would you? You gotta let some air in there. Good God. All right. Especially a thong. Like, what's the point of a thong? Like, why do you need to floss your ass? I mean, like, why? I don't get the point. Like, what is it doing for anybody? What is a thong doing for anybody? I understand there are certain clothes that look better if you wear a thong, and I think it's just for that. But for honestly all the purposes, what is a thong doing? What is it? What is it? Collecting, protecting? What does it? What's the point? And why would you wear a bra to bed? I don't get it. Anyway, all right. So, Shanann appeared to have a large amount of skin slippage in her amniotic sac protruding from her vaginal area. Okay. Now, this is different than the supplemental. Why is this different than the supplemental? Because we already know, and here I had just went talking about amniotic fluid that was on the sheet. Now, what? Okay, that's why there's a supplemental, because they figured it out. They couldn't figure out what this was, and they did the supplemental, which made a lot more sense, because this does not, because initially they thought something else. So let's refer to my earlier video about where I read that supplemental report, because they thought there was something else here. Essentially, I'm not going to say it, but check that other video out that I put in there. I can't remember what I called it. I think I stuck it in there with the one where she said that she was saying that she was a month ahead and made that armadillo give birth to explain it, because it was just weird what they thought was going on, and then they had to figure it out, which I don't understand why there could have been so much confusion. But anyway, nothing surprises me here. And why did she have so much skin slippage for only 2 days? Does not make sense. Okay, so it says here, she had a large amount of skin slippage in her amniotic sac, which is not with a K, it's supposed to be SAC, but anyway, like a ball sack, not a ball sack, like a sack of groceries. The fuck? Alright, protruding from her vaginal area. Dr. Burson examined the amniotic sac, once again with a K, should not have been, and removed Shanann's fetus. The fetus was collected as evidence, and CBI laboratory manager Aaron Koning arrived during the autopsy to transport the fetus directly to the CBI's forensic laboratory. What it sounds like he just comes up in this fetus mobile and, I'll take that, and goes. I mean, what the? So weird, because the supplemental is saying something totally different. During Shanann's autopsy, Dr. Burson pointed out several important findings. Dr. Burson advised Shanann's hyoid bone was not broken. And that is important. The hyoid bone being broken or not broken is something they look at for when you are manually strangled. And it says, although he pointed out bruising to the soft tissue on the right side of the hyoid bone. So it was not broken, but it was bruised. Dr. Burson also noted bruising to the muscles and tissues in Shanann's neck. Dr. Burson advised he did not note any other trauma to Shanann's body and found no evidence of disease. Dr. Burson advised Shanann's preliminary cause of death was asphyxiation due to manual strangulation. Okay. This is where a lot of conjecture and whatnot comes in, because there is a supplemental, there's like a separate part of her autopsy that says different things than that. This seems to be just the very, very brief outline as opposed to the more in-depth one. And maybe that's just where the Tamburglar is saying, okay, here we got this, okay, no evidence of disease, she's a healthy woman, bruising to the muscles and tissues in Shanann's neck, which I think the other one said there was none. I'll have to see, but yeah, this is interesting. I'm going to read it one more time. During Shanann's autopsy, Dr. Burson pointed out several important findings. Dr. Burson advised Shanann's hyoid bone was not broken, although he pointed out bruising to the soft tissue on the right side of the hyoid bone. Dr. Burson also noted bruising to the muscles and tissue in Shanann's neck. Dr. Burson advised he did not note any other trauma to Shanann's body and found no evidence of disease. Dr. Burson advised Shanann's preliminary cause of death was asphyxiation due to manual strangulation. Now, oftentimes they will take off the first layer of skin to look for the bruising and whatnot in the neck. And that's probably what they did with the skin slippage and whatnot. They probably cut in and saw the bruising to the muscles and tissue. That's because they're saying the muscles and tissue. So they obviously cut in and saw that. Second autopsy performed was on 4-year-old Bella. Bella was dressed in a pink nightgown covered in butterflies and a pair of underwear, which were removed and collected as evidence. Bella also had a large amount of skin slippage. Bella was x-rayed and there was concern she may have had a broken jaw. The x-rays were sent to a pediatric radiologist at Children's Hospital, who advised it appeared to be gas in the area of the jaw and not an actual fracture. It also appeared Bella had some scrapes to her buttocks and the tops of both shoulders. Dr. Burson pointed out several important findings. Dr. Burson advised Bella's frenulum, which is in a parentheses, skin connecting the top lip to the gum, was torn, which created a large hole. The inside of Bella's gums and inner lip also appeared to be bruised, and it appeared Bella had bit into her tongue. Dr. Burson indicated Bella's injuries were consistent with hard downward pressure on her nose and mouth. Dr. Burson indicated Bella's death was violent, as it appeared she struggled to get away. Dr. Burson's preliminary cause of death for Bella was asphyxiation due to manual smothering. Dr. Burson did not note any bruising to injury or Bella's neck. Now, I also remember Shanann, instead of comforting and spending time comforting and consoling the girls each time they had this happen, each of the girls tore their frenulum in accidents, like on the coffee table, that Shanann lifted up and showed on Facebook. She thought that'd be a great Facebook post. How many mothers out there lifted up their child's injured frenulum and took pictures as a cute little Facebook post? None of you? 830 of you? Oh, I know. Oh, no, none in the back? Yeah, no, me neither. Exactly. Nobody would frickin' do that. And with as little as she let them play, and they didn't ever horseplay, I've always wondered how they did that. And then I just wondered, did it ever heal properly? And, when whatever happened to them, did that maybe not fully healed injury get re-injured? After I saw the one post of her showing the frenulum, I think it was Cece who tore her frenulum. I had to Google it because I was like, that's never happened to my kids. Um, and it says, yeah, it's painful. Yeah, it happens. Don't lift up the lip to look at it. It'll cause much more pain. So I just thought about how much more pain she was inflicting in it, holding it up to take pictures for Facebook. It's just sad. The whole thing is so sad. Final autopsy performed was on 3-year-old Celeste. Celeste was dressed in a pink nightgown, Minnie Mouse underwear, and a pull-up. The nightgown and underwear were collected as evidence. Celeste had a large amount of skin slippage. Celeste did not have any obvious signs of injury or bruising to her neck area. I also did not observe any injury to Celeste's mouth or face, to include petechiae. Petechiae is the small little punctate bruising that will be on the eyes, the actual eyes themselves. There'll be like little punctate red dots, and then you can also get petechiae around your eyelids and your nose and whatnot. When my daughter had her hip surgery and she was crying so hard, in recovery, she had petechiae all over her face from crying so hard. I lit those frickin' recovery nurses up, and like I told you guys before, I was not happy with how much they let her suffer. But that's the petechiae. So you'll see those little tiny little punctate, like little pinholes, little bruising like that. Dr. Burson advised Celeste's preliminary cause of death was asphyxiation due to manual smothering. Dr. Burson also measured the hip and shoulder width of Bella and Celeste and advised the smallest width was Celeste at 9.5 inches. I was aware the opening to the hatch of the oil tank was only 8 inches in diameter. That does not make sense. How did he... Ugh. Because their hips weren't broken. I don't know. I guess he shimmied them in. The items of evidence collected during the autopsy were packaged and turned over to Detective Baumhover. Photographs of the autopsy taken by CSA Bryant are attached to this report, along with the sign-in sheets for each autopsy. And then the investigation continues, it's stated, and the attachments that are in zip drives, it looks like, are stated as 1 through 9. And then we've got more here on Discovery, page 623. And we've got more interviews. As we just had a really, really heavy bunch of information there, and I did the sensitivity warnings. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop it here just to keep everything in order so those that had to walk away, as they're more sensitive, can come back for the rest. That's not as upsetting. I thank you all for going through the rough parts with me. It never gets easier. Know that each autopsy, is in and of itself, and it has all of the other pertinent information about measurements of other, and everything, a full autopsy. So this was just the Hamburglers, where she was getting what she needed for the investigation, it sounds like, if you will. Oh, we got from pages 539 to 554. in our 1960 thing. And then let's see. Let me see if I can go here. I can probably see that we got to, because yeah, the discovery. So we got from discovery page 605 to 623. And that's where this is. I think that hopefully, we'll get back to some that's just not as heartbreaking as this certainly is. I just keep these girls in your prayers because I know that they're happy little angels. I really do. I think that, they're in heaven and they're happy. Um, and, with that, Happy New Year. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me to find the truth and the facts and to stop all of these stupid rumors. These rumors that just keep growing legs. We've got to stop. We got to keep things to the truth or we're never going to get anywhere. And we start 2023 looking forward to the truth. And thank you so much for your time. And I appreciate all of you. We're going to do a live. I like to do a live with a couple others. The two others I did before, my homies. And we're going to go through this and we'll have more people definitely come on to the live and we'll go through all of the questions that are here that you guys have been posting. I think that'll be a really fun live. I'll let you guys know before I do so. I will be going live. I'll send a link through YouTube, through my channel, but I will be doing it through Discord, as I don't really trust StreamYard. So we'll figure out how to do that just like the last time, and that'll be good. So hopefully a live within a week will do. Everybody's kind of back to their normal schedule. So again, thank you and Happy New Year. 2023 is going to be better. It has to be. Right? It just has to be. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.